Friends, the present era has seen an advent of many new emerging technologies. These technologies define a fundamental shift over the traditional technologies. The traditional technologies were driven by a cause and effect characteristic, while the new emerging technologies they are more driven by prompt to perform. As an example, in the traditional technologies, we knew that the effect of changing magnetic field could cause a induction of current which drives the motors. But in the new emerging technologies, you can create a prompt to modify the pivots in an Excel sheet to get a targeted output. Likewise, you can get away with an array of customer interface executives by a prompt driven AI agent. So, this fundamental shift, which has been caused by the new technologies over the traditional technologies, becomes more profound when we talk about the patenting of the inventions based on these technologies. So, while seeking protection of inventions based on these technologies, some particular questions crop up, such as: can an AI algorithm be patented in India? Can these new emerging technologies survive Section 3K? Section 3K lists out the non-patentable categories under the Patents Act. Apart from the such questions, another issue which comes up is whether the Indian Patent Office can follow the existing criteria used for the traditional technologies for examining invention based on the new emerging technologies. So, if such questions and or such issues matter to you, irrespective of in which capacity you are associated with the patent field, whether as a patent professional, innovator, or a patent agent aspirant, then this video is for you. As we have elaborated earlier, that there is a fundamental shift between the emerging technologies over the traditional technologies, and the criteria which was here to used for examining invention based on traditional technologies no longer suffices for the new emerging technologies, primarily because the structure of the new emerging technologies is vastly different from the traditional technologies. The systems on which these new emerging technologies are emerging from, that is very vastly different. Along with this structure as well as the systems on difference in the systems, even the applications which are coming out of new emerging technologies is totally different. Hence, the existing criteria or methodology to examine inventions for the traditional technologies falls very short when we are examining the new emerging technology based inventions. Since the criteria is different, the IPO guidelines also become different. The manner in which the application is to be put up and the application is to be described requires a great deal of different type of criteria to be followed. As you know that when preparing the application, IPO Indian Patent Office wants you to describe the invention. This describing of the invention is done through the drafting of specifications. Since the criteria has become different, the manner requirement of specifications describing the inventions has also become different. It becomes dependent on different emerging technologies. Now, why should this be concerning to you? For the patent agent exam aspirants, this becomes very important because in all likelihood, the drafting paper is going to come out with the questions based on inventions based on the new emerging technologies. Likewise, the students of patent law. The present era is for AI, and if you want to stay relevant, you need to keep abreast of the latest developments or guidelines of the Indian Patent Office. The inventors. Now, inventors have got the biggest stake of it all because they are the persons who are seeking grant of patent or protection from the Indian Patent Office. So, if their application for grant of patent is not in accordance with the IPO requirements or the specification falls short, then more than likely that the application may get rejected, or worse part, they may get embroiled in the litigation either with the patent office or with the courts, a scenario no inventor would like to have. So to develop expertise in specifications and building up a very good application, the best way is to understand the practical examples of invention based on these emerging technologies. So now let us delve into the what are the new requirements which has been issued by the patent office with respect to the inventions based on the new emerging technologies. Recently, in its drive to build up the criteria for inventions, examining inventions based on these new emerging technologies, the Indian Patent Office has brought in updated guidelines for computer related inventions, commonly referred to as CRI guidelines. These CRI guidelines have been brought in a direct response to the explosive growth of emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence, machine learning, natural language processing, large language models, blockchain, quantum computing, cloud computing, Internet of Things, and others. As you can see, these technologies are no longer futuristic concepts. They are the core technologies shaping the modern digital ecosystem. So, at heart of these innovations lies one common denominator: computers and programmable systems. This observation becomes very important when we want to see that why CRI guidelines were necessary, which have been brought in by the IPO at this time. Let us examine this in more detail, especially the necessity part. Now you see whether it is training an AI model or processing massive data sets on the cloud or running smart contracts on the blockchain or executing quantum algorithms. One thing becomes very clear, that the core functionality of all the emerging technologies is always implemented through computer hardware and software. And recognizing this reality, the IPO, Indian Patent Office, has thought it necessary to bring the CRI guidelines. You see, the CRI guidelines are more directed towards their own examiner. For since the criteria for examining the new age emerging technologies criteria is different, they wanted to bring in a standardized methodology or a process to help the examiner examine the new age inventions with clarity and consistency. And in a way, as an inventor or as a patent agent exam aspirant, this we could make use of it, because if we get to understand clearly what the how the examiner is going to examine the applications for this new age inventions, we can also build our application in accordance with the requirements, and also the build up the specifications with the knowledge what the examiner would be expecting and looking for when examining the patent application. So in a way, we would be well prepared and devoid of any unnecessary expectations either from the examiner or the IPO if we develop a thorough understanding of the CRI guidelines. The next important thing which comes up is that when the CRI guidelines have been issued in response to the criteria built up for the new emerging digital technologies, we must get to understand that why most emerging digital technologies are to be examined under CRI framework and not for the others. Let us try to see whether this premise is true or not. You see, if we go deep into the CRI guidelines, see, these CRI guidelines include the inventions that involve the use of computers, computer networks, or other programmable apparatus, and includes invention where one or more features are realized wholly or partially through computer hardware or software. Now, this means that the inventions which in the first glance do not appear to be inventions which are computer based, but if even a single element, either wholly or partially, is driven through computer hardware or software, the Indian Patent Office would be open to examining their patentability under the CRI guidelines. Along with these computer related inventions, the CRI guidelines also include information technology based inventions, which encompass the processing of data in any manner, inputting, storing, retrieving, transmitting, but using computers, networks, software, electronic or telecommunication equipment, etc. So now we see that the CRI guidelines, whether for the computer related inventions or for the information technology based inventions, there is a striking overlap, which is that both these technologies depend on computers, rely on software or hardware, or use networks or data processing techniques. So, because of this overlap and remembering that the core functionality of all the emerging technologies was either the computer, software, and or hardware, because of this overlap, there is a congruality between these two, between the emerging technologies and the CRI guidelines. And because of this overlap or the congruality, it becomes the key reason why most emerging digital technologies are examined under the CRI framework. Hence, the premise that all emerging technologies would be examined under the CRI framework stands true. Not, let us take a few examples of the emerging technologies and scrutinize whether this premise holds good for them. For example, cloud computing. Now, cloud computing uses distributed computer infrastructure, which has scalable data storage and processing capabilities. So, this would be covered under CRI guidelines under computer related inventions, as it is using computer infrastructure with scalable data patterns. Artificial intelligence. It basically allows recognition of patterns using computational models. Again, the computational part becomes important here. Machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence, which helps the system improve performance by learning from data. So, it would be covered under information technology based inventions, which are part of the CRI guidelines. Hence, again, the premise stands true. Blockchain technology, again, it operates as a distributed ledger across a computer network. Quantum computing, again, it uses quantum mechanical principles to perform computations, exponents, which makes the classical computers, um, um, which makes the computations exponentially possible on the computers, much faster than the classical computers. So, as you can see that despite all the differences between the respective technologies, all these technologies rely on computer based execution. Hence, all the inventions based coming out of these emerging technologies can be examined under the CRI guidelines. So, collectively, all these advancements are creating a highly interconnected and intelligent ecosystem, which is opening doors to new patentable innovations. And as we have mentioned and proved to an extent, that all the inventions coming out of these emerging technologies can be examined under a single umbrella, which is computer related inventions. Now, summarizing, CRI guidelines therefore play a decisive role in determining two things. Firstly, whether the invention under examination is excluded under Section 3K of the Patents Act, that is, would it survive the scrutiny under Section 3K? And second, it provides a methodology and a standardized method to examine inventions based on these emerging technology, and provides a standardization which is clear and consistent for all the inventions to the examiner. So, as we have now proved that the understanding of the CRI guidelines is very much important, and to help you delve deep develop a deep understanding, we are coming out with a book, Patenting Emerging Technologies from Algorithm and Quantum Inventions. This book covers CRI guidelines, their interpretation, and the most important, it includes practical example of emerging technologies. Hence, this book does not only elaborate on the law in reference to the new emerging technologies, it also shows to work around patentability challenge in real world scenarios. For the inventions which are based on the specific technology, the criteria outlined by the patent office as per the requirement of the specific technology varies widely between these different emerging technologies. So they pose a great challenge when building up an application, including fulfilling the requirements as dictated by the patent office and building the specifications. This book, by taking in the examples, it works out how to work around these requirements, these patentability challenges, so as to make a real world application to be submitted in the patent office. This book explains CRI provisions in a simple structured manner, analyzes new invention based on these new emerging technologies. It provides practical drafting strategies to overcome section 3K. As elaborated before, the requirements per se of each technology is different, and building of the specification would entail meeting these requirements and also noticing the do's and don'ts required for each specific technology. So the book by taking these examples gives you the practical drafting strategies on how to build specifications if you fulfill the criteria required, as well as create an elaborate differentiation with regard to invention based on that specific technology. And this all is to build to overcome the objections under section 3K. The book further discusses important case laws and IPO practices, and by the use of all the above, by understanding the CRI provisions, taking up the inventions on individual emerging technologies, by the taking elaborating on the case laws, and ultimately building up practical drafting strategies, the book aims to bridge the gap between technology and patent law. So we recommend that this book would be found useful firstly by the patent agent exam aspirants, primarily for their drafting 2 paper, because it is very likely that in the coming times questions would be asked for invention based on these new emerging technologies. This is very likely because ultimately the patent office would like to have the patent agents who would be their associates in coming out and meeting the new inventions, meeting the new age ecosystem. Patent professionals and attorney, primarily because this is the era of AI, and if you want to stay relevant, you need to have deep understanding of the requirements pertaining to the AI vis-a-vis the patent office. The technology innovator, as we have elaborated before, they have got the biggest stakes of it all. It is very important for them to have a good understanding of the CRI guidelines, because they are going to seek the protection for their invention. So it is very crucial that they build a good application, build good drafting specifications as per the requirement. Otherwise, there could be a chance that they could embroiled in the litigation or their application could get rejected. So it is imperative develop a good understanding, build a good application so that their application sails through. Hence, because of all this, this book does not really become an optional reading. It is going to be a strategic asset for your professional success. This era it cannot be stressed more that this era is of new emerging technologies, and anything it is going to be the part of the ecosystem in which your professional success will be determined with your deep understanding of these individual technologies and the requirements for patentability under the patent law and by the patent office procedures. This book, Patenting Emerging Technologies from Algorithm to Quantum Inventions, is now available on Amazon. You could search by title on Google, or the link is provided in the description. So, if you want clarity, confidence, and competence in patenting new age technologies, this book belongs to your desk. And to help you build competence with confidence and clarity, we are going to bring out with a playlist in which many inventions based on each individual emerging technologies are going to be analyzed as per the new CRI guidelines, where we are going to list out the enlisted requirements as provided under the CRI guidelines, the do's and don'ts required to be filled in the application as per the patent office, and more importantly, highlighting the pitfalls which should be avoided in building the specifications as per the requirements of your application. So we look forward your to your being as a part of this journey, and for this we would ask you to subscribe to our channel so that as and when we are bringing in the playlist you can be notified immediately. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Best of luck.